Hello, check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Well, good evening. My name is Michael Jefferson, and welcome to another edition of Affairs of State. With Affairs of State, what we do on this particular show is that we dedicate particular episodes strictly to issues that affect the African American community. But in a lot of the situations, it's not just the issues that affect the African American community or the environment. There are also issues that affect all communities. And these are things that we should all be aware of. And if we are not aware of any of these items or any of these concerns, then I think it's time for us to take the time to actually consider how we can start truly working together. Because if we don't take the time to work together, then guess what's going to happen? We are going to miss out on a lot that can be done and how we can work together as one. Today, I have individuals from the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus. And for this, I say thank you very much for being on the show. I had the privilege of being able to interview several members, and it was 3 years ago. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been over 3 years since the last time I had a chance to interview them. And we looked at each other and was like, oh my gosh, yeah. And I said, yeah, I'm getting old. I don't want to say that word too loud, but I guess I am. Just had my dad's 80th birthday party this past weekend, and he actually hits the actual number tomorrow. And for him, and I must say this, for everyone that has served this country, thank you very much. We don't take the time to say thank you. But for that, I say thank you. He served in Vietnam in the Army. And for all of those who served back then and for those who are serving today, I say thank you. But with that being said, I would like for the members of IBLC to introduce themselves.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening.
Thank you for having us here. My name is Earl Harris, Jr. I'm a state representative from House District 2, Northwest Indiana. I serve as the chair of the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus. Also serve as assistant floor leader, and then on 3 committees, Ways and Means, Government and Regulatory Reform, and I'm the ranking minority member on Roads and Transportation.
Yes, sir. And you can just turn it up. Yeah, there you go.
Good evening. I'm Representative Carolyn Jackson. I represent District 1, which is Hammond, Whiting, and East Chicago, quite naturally all the way up in Northwest Indiana. I serve as Vice Chair of the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus. Also, I serve as the Assistant Minority Whip, and I'm also Vice Chair of the Power Legislative Caucus. I serve on 4 committees. I'm the ranking minority member for the Elections Committee. I'm also on Environmental, Natural Resources, and Family, Children, and Human Affairs.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here. I'm State Representative John Bartlett, House District 95. It's right here in Marion County, the southern half of Lawrence Township. Serve on 3 committees: Government and Regulatory Reform, Labor and Pensions, and the Ag Committee. Also serve as parliamentarian for the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus.
You pop the whip to make sure everyone stays in line, right?
That would be me.
I will always be your friend. Now, with that, this is one of those moments where it's very important, because we have to be cognizant of individuals that actually represent the state of Indiana, the local state of Indiana. We do have representatives that actually go to D.C., but they're here, they're local. And with that, there are issues that actually we need to be cognizant of, to say, hey, what can we do to come alongside? Because since we actually voted for them and they represent us, we also have things that we need to do to make sure we're held accountable, because they're going, and as a matter of fact, all three are members of the Democratic Party. And because all three are members of the Democratic Party, the other party that's in control, the Republican Party, has a supermajority. And what does that mean? That means they have to fight twice, 3 times, and even harder on some occasions just to get their issues heard. In some cases, they're able to co-author with other members across the aisle, and unfortunately, sometimes they're not. And when they don't, that's when those issues really come to bear. But with that, I also want each representative to go in and speak about some of their major initiatives that we should be aware of. Because if we're not aware of some of the major initiatives that are going on right here in the state of Indiana, then how can we come alongside of each representative to say, what can we do? Can we write additional letters? Can we make sure that the supermajority know that as constituents that we are concerned as well? And these are things that we need to make sure that as constituents that we come right alongside our representatives. So please make sure you speak about some of the main initiatives. I know you have quite a few, but if you could just highlight maybe 1 or 2 that really we should really know about and we should really pay close attention to.
Okay. Thank you. So if I may start off by sharing with you that every session IBLC has a theme. So this year it was focused on healthcare. So healthy bodies, healthy minds is our theme for 2025, and all members have the opportunity to provide a piece of legislation for this. And we have a press conference. We also meet with the 4 leaders of the caucuses and the governor. We also met this year with Dr. Weaver, Department of Health, because we have a new administration. The bill that I filed for our agenda has to do with helping out our shortages of physicians in the state of Indiana. So mine has to do with a loan repayment. So it breaks the state up into thirds, northern, central, southern. And you come out of medical school owing about $205,000.
Yes.
And so it's a 10-year payoff. So you commit to 10 years staying in Indiana, and if you stay those 10 years, you will have received $200,000. A little bit of the theory behind that amount of time is 10 years, usually people have kind of set their roots. They've gotten married, maybe started a family, and usually are not going to leave. So, and it is prorated. So if something happens and you have to, you take a position, or your spouse takes a position, or you move to take care of a parent or whatever it is, and you leave, it's prorated. So if you've stayed 5 years, you would have made $100,000. Notice I do easy math when I can. And, so that's part of, that's the legislation that I filed for the agenda. Part of that, and it focuses on OBGYNs and primary doctors, physicians, because one of the things I learned, I knew of our 92 counties, not all had OBGYNs, but what I've learned in the last month or so is that about half of our counties don't have OBGYNs. And when you look at maternal health, and Representative Vanessa Summers has started a maternal health caucus, we have a lot of issues in relation to women getting pregnant and having babies, and unfortunately more than we want to have lose their life actually by giving birth. So that's a big push for us in terms of healthcare. In terms of myself, I have a couple of bills that are still alive and moving through the process. Both of them are targeted at Northwest Indiana, where I live and represent. We started in Indiana, I believe it was 4 years ago, the Indiana Crime Gun Task Force, and it started here in central Indiana with 8 counties that are here, and it's really focused on getting illegal guns off the street. So what it has also done is a lot of times guns and illegal narcotics are tied together, so it's benefited in both. The goal is to take this statewide. So 2 years ago, we added Allen County, and I had an amendment on the floor asking about adding in Lake County, where I live. And what I was told at the time by Representative Carball and Sturtevant, who Representative Sturtevant started this with legislation. Carball was doing the legislation to add in his county is that we can only add in one county at a time. Present will get up and speak and promise that next time Lake County will be. So they did hold to their word. So Lake County, it's gone through the process. It's headed towards the governor's desk for signing, so happy about that. Then the other bill I have alive, which is made it through the House, and it's over in the Senate in appropriations, and Senator Mishler, who's over appropriations, is become the main sponsor of the bill, is actually something that my father, when he was alive and had this seat, was working on, and it's bringing a professional sports to Northwest Indiana. When you look at Northwest Indiana, we've done a lot of things there legislatively and also growth in our area. With the casino move, it became Hard Rock, double track trains. We've provided funding and have funding in the budget this year for the airport located in Gary. You know, we have beaches, lakefronts. And so it's adding to that tourism push of looking at bringing a sports stadium, professional sports, to Northwest Indiana. The Bears has gotten a lot of attention because they haven't locked in. So I've had a lot of fun being interviewed by Chicago stations about that, and even my family and friends who've looked at me and said, leave my team alone. To which I say, I'm trying to bring them closer to you. You live in Northwest Indiana. And, you know, we have like the New York Jets and the New York Giants that are named after New York but actually play in New Jersey. So it would not be the first time. So we're looking at that, and I actually have to tell you, my legislative assistant, Alexis, called me, and what I've told people is we're open to all sports, football, basketball, baseball, soccer, hockey, etc. One sport I did not mention, but actually we received a call, and I have a Zoom meeting this Friday, is cricket. Because cricket is growing in the United States. Yeah, there's going to be, I believe what I read is 2027, there'll be a cricket team in Chicago. And so Willow TV, which is where it's seen, the gentleman has reached out about talking about Northwest Indiana and bringing a cricket team to Northwest Indiana. So I have to add that to my list now when I talk about sports. So very excited about what this will do and the continued growth. When you look at tourism in Indiana, tourism is about, I think, $11-12 billion in the state of Indiana. So Northwest Indiana and making it a destination site is one of the things that I've talked about since I ran for office the first time.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Representative Jackson.
Yes, as Representative Harris says, we have the IBLC has an initiative this year, and healthy bodies. And one of the bills that I brought to the table had to do with providing care for police and firemen. You see, in our state, we have an awful lot of volunteer firefighters, and those volunteer firefighters do the same job as our firefighters that are being paid and salary. Only thing is they don't have any insurance. So if they go into a situation where they experience after effects such as PTSD, things like that, they have no coverage. So what they are doing is they're rushing to go back to work because they have families to care for. And what my bill would do is it would create a fund where the state would cover it so that they could be off work, so that they could get the necessary care they need and the treatment that they need until they're ready to go back to work. Because most jobs are not going to pay for your medical care when you sustain certain medical issues while you are on another job other than theirs. The same thing with regards to the police department. You see, if you're rushing to get back to work instead of staying and taking the necessary time that you need in order to heal, you're putting your life, you're putting those individuals whom are working with you, you're putting them in jeopardy, as well as you're not providing the service that you should and could to the community. So that is why I brought that bill forth. And hopefully I will get a hearing on it next year, because it doesn't look like at this point that I will get one. But it's something that's definitely needed, because with all the millions of dollars that the volunteer firefighters save our state, there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't be doing all that we can do in order to protect them. The other bills that I have authored in the past, and I'm still working on it, is clean drinking water, testing the water to make sure that there is no lead in it for the children. I think we spoke about this a couple of years ago.
Yes, we did.
Yes. Well, we've got the reports back. We've had a lot of schools in the state to test, and they did do the remediation, but we still have a lot more to go. So what my bill would do is to hold the school superintendent accountable. It is not something that is going to cost your school, because we're going through the IFA. IFA already has money that has come from EPA in order to cover the testing, and if you are in an area where it is below poverty level, a very, very minimum amount, it will also cover for the remediation as well of those pipes in the school to make sure that those children have access to clean drinking water. And I think that those people in charge of the schools, I think they need to be held accountable, because anytime you take on a position as being a superintendent, you are responsible for every child that is in that building or in your district. And if you are neglecting them, then you need to be charged with neglect. So that's where I am, and I definitely would like to see this bill to move forward, because, as you know, too much lead will cause too many serious health conditions. Those health conditions, in most instances, are irreversible.
Yes,
and
they are.
With those health conditions, they will cause a lifelong list of problems for those individuals to endure. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for continuing that initiative as well. Yes, sir. Representative Bartlett.
Again, good evening. You mentioned earlier on about being co-author on a bill. Rep. Harris talked about the gun bill. I was a co-author on that bill. Representative Greg Steerwald was the author, and I was co-author on that bill. And we've gotten something like 238 illegal guns off the street here in Marion County and surrounding counties. Got some drugs off the street with that bill as well. So it has been very effective and very helpful, and I look forward to do the same thing there in Lake County. I had a bill, House Bill 1047, could not get a hearing on it. But House Bill 1047 said if there's a police action shooting, that policeman would be tested on the spot for drugs and or alcohol. In my opinion, it would have been a win-win, not only for the victim, but the police as well. As a parent, if your child is shot by the police officer, you want to know that that was a police decision. It was not influenced by drugs and or alcohol. So to test that officer on the spot would protect him if he sued, he and the city is sued. It protects them, and it lets the parent know that, as I said before, that police action shooting was not influenced by drugs and or alcohol. I got a little pushback, and the committee chair would not hear the bill, but I will not stop fighting for that. I think it's a necessary action, and that we as citizens who pay the police officers through our tax dollar, we have a right to know if you're on the job in performing your job influenced with alcohol and or drugs. So I will try that again. If we don't get something to put it in this year, I'll try it again next year. The health bill that I had was a human trafficking bill, House Bill 1416. That bill puts signage into all the service station restrooms, and again on the premises, 2 places in the service station, It, in rest areas across the great state of Indiana, be a human trafficking sign. And hospitality workers would have to take like a half-hour online training as to how to identify human trafficking. Got a hearing on that bill, passed out of committee. I think it was like 12 to 1, and it passed out of the House, 91 zip, and we sent it over to the Senate with Senator DeNiro and Senator Jackson were sponsors for that over in the Senate, and we presented that bill today. It was amended and weakened, but we wanted to keep the bill moving. We didn't fight that. We want to keep the bill moving and see how it comes out of the Senate, take a look at it when it gets back to the House, and we'll decide what we're going to do with it from there. But human trafficking is a $275 billion a year industry, and that's with a B. It annually, and that was in February 2023 when United Nations put those numbers out. So it grows constantly. So those are old numbers, but $275 billion a year industry in 2025, and there are parts to human trafficking, the organ trade, the sex trade, slave labor trade. They have a business where they kidnap young girls 10 to 27, keep them in cages, breed them, and sell the babies. So it not only do you lose a child, but then you've got grandbabies that you'll never see. And so I think human trafficking is probably the worst crime that can be committed, and I am committed to eradicating human trafficking for the length of time I'm in the State House.
Okay, I'm going to start with that, Representative Bartlett, because I remember us talking about that a while ago. With that, and I don't know if this is a subject that would be considered taboo, but are young males also involved in human trafficking as well?
Absolutely. Women and children and young guys, because actually there are people in power with money would prefer, males that would prefer to have another male as opposed to a female. So all of us are at risk. In the human organ trade, when you're perfectly healthy and they strap you down to a gurney and just sell your body parts like car parts, like pull apart, you know what I'm saying? So, but that high dollar volume makes it attractive to so many.
Well, let me ask you this. In the human trafficking area, what we are normally accustomed to is more so sexually oriented. But what I'm hearing you say today is that it's still that,
yeah.
But we're also looking at where it's also organ donating and where we need individuals that require organs. Because I remember many years ago, Mickey Mantle, I don't know if you guys remember that, but Mickey Mantle needed I think it was a liver transplant. And he jumped the line ahead of a lot of needy people, well ahead of him. I mean, that were well ahead of him. But because of his notoriety, who he was a baseball player with the New York Yankees, he jumped the line. But guess what? He got the liver, he abused it, and he died. And there was a huge uproar because of that. Is there anything, is there anything that can be done about that, or is there anything being done about making sure you stay in your place? I hate to say it like that, but
that piece I've not looked at. Okay. What I do look at is if you Google how much are human body parts on the black market, and I've not done this since 2023, but you as an individual would be worth $535,000. So if I can get two individuals and sell off all their body parts, I'm an instant millionaire. So they can pay dollars, especially overseas, where you see a picture of a house that got 5 or 6 Rolls Royces and parked in front of it and 4 or 5 Bentleys. That's money. And if their child gets sick and there's someone here.
They're making a phone call.
Yeah. And I tell you this, actually African Americans are worth more money in the body parts because of the melanin that's in our body is a preservative for our organs.
Really?
Yes.
That I didn't know.
That's one of the reasons why you see so many black kids come up missing.
If I can add something, I just want to share. Representative Bartlett just shared something that made all of us go, wow, did not know that.
Yeah.
I have learned a lot over the years from Representative Bartlett's push in terms of working on stopping human trafficking. And I've actually gotten involved in an organization in Northwest Indiana called Safe CHR, and Representative Bartlett has come up for events. And sometimes people forget, you think of places like LA, Vegas, New York, you think about places like that, but in Indiana, as Representative Bartlett is talking about, we have human trafficking issues that people don't even think about. And when you talk about where Representative Jackson and I live in Northwest Indiana, our proximity to Chicago adds to that and makes Northwest Indiana one of the hot spots. So I'm very appreciative of what Representative Bartlett has been doing to fight this. And then we also, because we've had panel discussions at events we've had people that have talked about being human trafficked just for labor. So that's another part of this equation as well. There's an Indian, it's a couple. When they came to the country, they basically, the husband and wife, they were moved into being forced to work at, I believe, a restaurant. And so they were able to escape it. But there's a lot of things going on underneath that not all of us know. And again, I appreciate what Representative Bartlett has done to continue to fight against this, bring attention to it, and then put things in place. And I'll add one more thing, as he was talking about, his legislation has to do with signs. If you travel and pay attention when you go into restrooms at like airports, in other states, you will see that. We're in Northwest Indiana, so Midway Airport. So fly out of Midway Airport a lot. I visit family in Corpus Christi, Texas, which means we always go through Houston. Yeah. The Houston airport, in the restrooms, they have that. Obviously, like you were asking about, is it a man thing too? I'm a man, so I go into the men's restroom.
Right.
They also have had digital billboards I've seen at the Houston airport about human trafficking. So getting the word out and what Representative Bartlett is working on is a vital part of reducing this and working against it.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the next questions, and do you want to chime in?
Yes. Yes, I was just going to say I was in Las Vegas last month, and upon going to the restroom, there is a sign in each stall that explains what you need to do if you are being human trafficking, and the phone number that you would call. It was such a simple phone number. I shouldn't say simple, but an easy to remember phone number, because the average person who's being human trafficked, they don't have a pen and pencil where they would need to write the telephone number down. So when I saw that, I haven't shared it with Representative Bartlett, but I was so excited and so happy to see it, because as you know, Las Vegas is a
hot spot.
Definitely is a hot spot for something like that.
Now, what about the state of Indiana? I had other questions I really wanted to get to, but this, I think, is very important that we truly highlight. Now, so for the state of Indiana, now you mentioned the different cities. Do we have anything like that in the stalls in the different places here in the state of Indiana yet?
No. That's what House Bill 1416 will do. It one of the things that, if you're being trafficked, one of the things you learn early is to remember numbers, to remember badges, to remember certain things. And so the one time that you are alone when you're being trafficked is when you go to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. So that person, young folk, can remember that number, and when they feel like it's a safe time, they can make that call to the human trafficking hotline and get help. But one of the major human trafficking events in America is the Indianapolis 500.
Now, I've heard that the 500 has changed quite a bit. I'm not a native Hoosier. I moved here in 1991. But one of the things that I heard is that the Snake Pit
yes.
was one of those areas where a lot of things occurred. And since we're streaming live, we ain't going to talk about that. So we're not going to get into all of those things that I was told about that actually occurred in the snake pit. But
They cleaned it up.
they've cleaned it up. But at the same time, you're still saying that a lot of things still occur?
Yeah, they don't happen in the snake pit, but they happen.
Please. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The major sporting events, guys are away from home, got money to spend, want to have a good time. A trafficker, what do you want? I got it. And you mentioned earlier about should male folk be afraid?
Yeah.
It's this has gotten to be an equal opportunity, if you will. They don't. Guys are in just as much danger as women, and I tell women all the time: you go shopping, if you come out and you're parked next to a van, don't put your groceries in on that side. That's my recommendation, because the way vans are made today, if I'm the driver, Rep. Jackson comes out, I smile and speak. Women relax. You know? So she goes to put her groceries in. I hit a button. That side door opens. Two guys snatch her in, hit her with that needle. When she wakes up, she don't know where she is.
I actually have 3 daughters, and I also teach at a major university here at Ball State, here in Indiana. Indiana.
Yeah.
And pretty much all of my students know that because I let them know. Yeah. One of the things that I've told all 3 of them, because they all 3 drive, is that you need to make sure that your car is, that when you put your car in park, you want to make sure that that door doesn't unlock. Because what happens, as soon as you put your car in park, traditionally, your door unlocks. And what happens if all of a sudden you start relaxing and you put your car in park? Your door unlocks, guess what? I can open the door. But with them, when they put their car in park, their door remains locked. So that's something else I would recommend that you please add to that, just in terms of just recommending to individuals, because that's something a lot of people don't think of.
Something else I learned too
Yes,
is,
sir.
of course, you're being watched all the time. So if a female goes to the grocery, and the state representative talked to me about this today, she's got a young daughter. They bend her license plate.
Thank you, because I've seen, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, when they bend your license plate, that says that you're a single woman or a single person, and this is where you shop. So when you come back and someone is driving through, they see that license plate that's bent, then they'll wait for you. And then they have their ways, that's their trade. So they know what to do, how to move, how to act, swoop you up, and be gone.
We just learned something else. That's a new one.
Yes.
I was waiting to share a couple of things, and I'm making a mental note of that to talk to people about. We passed, I think it was 2 years ago, part of if you go for your CDL is human traffic training, because we've learned also that truck stops are a big place where it happens as well. So if you're going to go for your CDL, you're going to learn about this, because as you talked about, people come up, you're on the road a lot, and I'm going to repeat, what did John say? Somebody come up to you and go, what do you want?
Yes.
I can take care of that.
Yes.
The other thing I want to share, and I learned this when I was getting ready to moderate one of the panels for the Safe CHR group that I talked about in Northwest Indiana, and I won't stand up and do this, but there's a hand signal that goes like this.
Okay.
And so in the video that I remember the first time I saw about this, it was a young girl being led through a hotel lobby by an older gentleman. There was a woman walking, and she had her umbrella, and the little girl, when they crossed each other, knocked the umbrella out of her hand. And when the woman stopped and turned and looked, the girl was walking and doing that with her hand.
Can
Opening
you guys,
and closing.
Can you guys
opening
see
and closing.
this
And
on
so-
cameras? Can you guys see this?
That's a sign of a person who needs help and is in danger of human trafficking. So look for those things. So if you get a little kid who you think is just being obnoxious, when they pass you, pay attention, because they may be doing that as a way, or an adult as well, as a way to give you a sign that they are in need of help, and they need help right now.
Wow.
Yes, I was just going to add, I used to work in criminal justice, and one of the things that they always told us is if you are on your way to the car, make sure you have your keys in your hand so that you can have that key ready to open up the door, so that you aren't standing there looking in your purse or feeling in your pocket or looking around, because that is, you're distracted. So you don't see what's coming, you don't see who's around, you don't see anything because you're focused on looking in your purse or feeling in your pocket. And the other thing is, they also said to us, if you have a late model car, they can program your car so that when you put that car in park, only the driver's door would be the one that would unlock.
Yes.
Because all of them unlock at the same time,
Yes.
normally.
Yes.
And it's just a simple thing that most dealers do. And I've noticed here lately with my friends, their cars, when they purchase a car, the dealer automatically does that so that they don't have to worry about it. Mm-hmm.
Some dealers.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah.
But again, it's human trafficking is not something new. If you all remember, years ago, I want to say it was in Atlanta, when they arrested a guy because so many children were coming up missing. And they found out later that what he was doing was selling their body parts. And that has to be at least 10 to 15 years ago. So it's been ongoing for a long time. I'm just very glad that it's becoming more prominent and people are finding out about it. And they're watching. You got to hold your child's hand. You got to know where your child is. You can't go to the store and figure, oh, well, I'll just be paying attention over here because they're okay right here. No, they need to be at your side where you're holding their hand and you can have both eyes on them at all times.
Thank you for this particular subject. And as you mentioned, a lot of things are eye-opening. Some things I was aware of, others had no idea. And I think we need to continue on with this conversation, but where we can invite even more people to the table and bring more awareness to this, because this is an important topic. Because listening to what you're having to say, there's no age limit either. Yeah, there's no age limit. And whether you're 6 or 96, you still have to be concerned about your body parts being harvested. So, wow. Well, some of the other things, and I don't even know if I'm going to get to the questions I actually had, but based upon some of the initiatives and some of the bills that you mentioned, I do want to follow up on a couple of them. Guns, and this is, someone shared with me, I think it was last week, there was a shooting at a funeral. And I don't know if you are aware of that, but there was a shooting at a funeral where they were mourning the death of a father, grandfather, uncle, and this young man was at this funeral grieving over the death of his grandfather. And others that had a beef with him actually came to the funeral, shot him, and killed him just before they were going to the processional to Crown Hill Cemetery. You also mentioned, each of you mentioned about gun violence, getting guns off the street. There are a lot of good people that have guns. I'll be the first to say, I own guns. I didn't say gun. I said guns. I'm from Mississippi. In the state of Mississippi, you don't need a license. At last count, the guns that I could see, one of my uncles had 22, not a 22, but 22 guns. And that was the last count when I was able to count the number. But what can we do to keep the guns out of hands of people that really shouldn't have them? Is there anything that can be done? I know the NRA, they have their hands in the politicians' pockets, making sure that they keep them filled. Not you, because I actually know you guys. But for our other brothers and sisters across the aisle, unfortunately, they make sure that continues to happen for guns to remain out there in the hands of people that don't deserve them.
Let me say this. First off, I think the worst piece of legislation that I've seen since I've been in the State House, and I've been there since 2007, is permitless gun carry. We use the dollars from the license to fund some police training. So that bill just did not make sense to me. So now, Michael, you turn 18. You can go and buy a gun and a holster, put on your side, walk down the street. You're perfectly legal. But you cannot go into a tavern and buy a beer. A beer never killed nobody. But guns do. NRA, you mentioned NRA. Who is NRA? NRA is a group of gun manufacturers who developed an organization. And of course they're going to push for guns because their pockets get fat when you buy the guns.
Yes, sir.
But over and above that, in America, there are three pillars where dollars are made: healthcare, education, and prisons. That's where the most money is made in those three entities. So if I can give you a gun, you get in trouble and go through the court system, then you end up in prison. And when we argued, and that's another bill we need to talk about too, 1662, when we argued against 1662, criminalizing homelessness, Sheriff Forstall stopped me and told me, if I lock up a homeless person, it costs me $75 a day to keep that person in jail. That's $2,250 per month. So who's making that money? Somebody's making that money. So all of this with the guns boils down to dollars and cents.
And if I can add, correct, it's dollars and cents, and then what it ends up being also is a safety issue. You know, he's now retired, but our former superintendent of the state police spoke against the bill. And if I remember correctly, one of the things he said is, with permits, when officers pull someone over, they can run a quick check.
Yes.
They're permitted gun owner, which then, okay, they probably have a gun, or not. Mm-hmm. Now, I have to make the presumption that everyone you pull over has a gun, because you don't have any idea, anything that's in place that shows you whether or not they're carrying a gun or not. The other thing I believe that was also came out of this is, and I don't remember the numbers, but I believe we had thousands of people that were denied permits because of something that they had done, something criminal, something, whatever the reasons were. It was a large number that no longer an issue. So we did not believe you should have a permit. Now that's just gone out the window.
Everyone can have a gun.
So how many people have guns that we previously had said you should not carry a firearm, you should not have it? And it's just made it safer. And I hate to say this, and I remember seeing, I forget which state it was, that did this before Indiana, and I remember seeing a story on the news on this, and it was a national news, and you had people just walking around with guns and ARs and et cetera, and they were interviewing people, and one of the things that I made me laugh, but inside I cried a little bit, you had guys who, for them, that gun became their manhood. And that's a dangerous thing when that gun is your manhood and you using it when you should not use it, or you getting into something because you have it with someone else. So it's, I'm not anti-gun. I'm not against, people owning it. I just think we need to have protections in place to make sure that it's done correctly and make sure that the right people, right people is not the right phrasing, that the wrong people don't have an easy access.
When I came to the legislature, I authored several bills. One of the bills was, if you are in a domestic violence situation where the police is called, that if you have a gun, that they are to remove those guns from the premises until after everything has been resolved. I was not given a hearing on that because it was said that, that's not necessary. But if you look at the statistics, a lot of violence and deaths are caused by individuals who are family members. They are could be a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a husband and wife who have got into a dispute. And their temper's short, and they go and they grab the gun and they shoot their loved one, or they shoot the children or themselves, and to this day, that has never been resolved. They felt like it's okay for you to still have that gun in your home, regardless of the fact that you have a pending case for domestic abuse. The other bill that I had was one that would require the guns to be safely stored in a box or lockbox or whatever. Because as you know, you got a lot of children here in this state who have gotten hold to guns, killed themselves or their siblings. They didn't think that was a good idea either. But the reality is a gun has never killed anyone by itself.
This is true.
It is the individual who is the one who pulls that trigger and kills a person. And until we get legislation that is going to make sure that that gun does not get in the hands of those individuals who either have mental health problems, who cannot control themselves, or whatever the case is, or who don't have those guns in a safe storage, we're going to have a problem.
I want to add something as Representative Jackson was talking about safe storage. We had an amendment, one of our other House Democrat members, when we were going through the budget process on the House side before it moved to the Senate. And it was an amendment for $100,000, which, if you know how large the budget is for Indiana, $100,000 is budget dust. That's the term that's used. And it would have bought gun locks so that people could have been provided gun locks. Lock your gun so your child doesn't get it. And I got up and I spoke because I actually have one less cousin because he was at his friend's house. His friend grabbed Dad's gun, which was not locked up in any way, pulled the trigger. So I have one less cousin. His younger brother does not have an older brother. His parents have one less child.
Sorry to hear
so something, thank you, but something that really was a small amount in terms of $100,000 in relation to our $45 billion two-year budget was denied. And we don't know, and we won't know, how many lives could have been saved by that.
Well, let me ask you guys this for gun violence. As I mentioned earlier, I'm originally from Mississippi. You rarely hear of any young kids or even older kids getting hurt or injured. Growing up in Mississippi, my uncle would keep his gun in the corner. As I said, my great uncle. My uncle would keep all of his guns, well, the 22 I was able to count, were out in the open. And we were taught and we were trained very early. You touch it, need I say any more? See your reaction, and that's all we had to hear. But we were also taken outside and trained how to use those guns. And I think, and as much as I truly hate to say this, but I have noticed that there is a difference in gun awareness between what we do or what is done down in southern states, even though we do still have our issues, and what is done in northern states in terms of gun training, because there is a big difference in how we take a look at what we should do with handguns, with any kind of guns, period.
I have to agree. I grew up in Mississippi as well. And the same thing happened with us. Nobody hid a gun under a pillow or behind something or way up in the attic somewhere.
Here's my cell phone.
Or whatever.
The gun
it was
right
there. And you knew that you better not touch it.
That's right.
Okay, it was not something that you picked up to experiment and figure out how it worked or whatever because you had seen some Wild Wild West movie on TV. The reality is you knew how it worked. You knew how to load it. It was no secret. You were taught. And if you were lucky enough, you got a chance to go hunting with your uncle, your dad, your brother, or whoever. And you had the necessary training, and you had the wherewithal to understand that this gun is here, but is for one purpose and one purpose only. And you knew better than to even think about deciding, oh, I'm going to take it to school like some of these children here do. It was never an option. It was never a thought or anything like that. But here, I guess one thing we don't have that we had when I grew up in Mississippi is the open space. You could go out in the woods and you could set up things and target practice. I'm just being real.
And you know what, that is true. I have to agree with you because I was given a 22 and I could go outside being in the country.
Absolutely.
After being trained how to use it and having gun training and gun awareness, I could go out in my backyard and shoot.
Exactly.
And I was told, okay, you know what to do with it, right? And I put it back where it belonged and made sure it was safe. It was still in the open. And no one touched it, regardless of the visitors that came to that house.
Exactly, and everybody else had a gun in their home, too, so it wasn't a show and tell thing.
That's right.
Okay.
Let me say this. If you bought 100 18-year-olds in here that has bought a gun and asked one question, do you know how to clean it? The answer would be no. A gun that's not cleaned is extremely dangerous.
Yes.
They see them on TV with an automatic weapon turned sideways, and that's cool. There's nothing cool about a gun.
No, it's not.
I own guns.
But remember, you're Democrats.
Yeah.
You're against guns.
Yeah. But
remember that? You're Democrats. You're against guns. You're not supposed to have guns in your house. Remember?
Well, let me say this. Across the aisle, they are experts at framing their point. They're experts at framing their point. And on this side of the aisle, we allow them to identify who we are, which is a conversation for another day.
Yes, sir.
But those
Yes, sir.
those young folk gaining access to guns in the South, in Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, you understand the weapon.
Yes.
You know, and you talked about veterans earlier. See, when you go into the military, I don't care what your MOS, you become a trained killer. I don't care what your MOS, you become a trained killer. And a lot of them, to take someone's life, everyone in this room, it would affect you differently if you had to take someone's life. And so you don't know what's going to happen there, what happens here when you take someone's life. And nobody even pays attention to that. I think that anytime you have been deployed in a war, you should have to go through a mental health test before you come back into society.
I agree with that.
Okay. But if you're out in the streets and take someone's life, it should be a requirement that you get some mental health assessments. Thank you.
Yeah. And I have to agree with that. My dad, as I said, is a veteran. He hits 80 years old tomorrow. He just found out that he had PTSD 6 years ago. 6 years ago. And he served in Vietnam. Now,
Is he getting a disability?
100%. And now he's in a position where he helps other vets understand that you need to be checked out. But it took another vet after, and he served in Vietnam for 3-4 years, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, that was from, I think he was released in 68, 69, something like that, maybe in 70. But at the same time, from then until 6 years ago, he had been suffering from PTSD, and you're talking about guns. So he was a person who was able to, for the most part, deal with it. But how many other veterans, as you said, should come out and be trained to make sure, okay, well, not trained, but make sure that you're tested to, okay, find out where you are mentally. We need to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
My oldest brother was in Vietnam. He'll be 79 May 29th. Is Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. And my oldest brother, when he came back, was not the same person that left. I understand him, or understood him when he came home. Because we're 2 years apart, so we've always been pretty close. Uh-huh. And I recognized the change. And when he came back, it took him a while to reacclimate to
society.
You know? So what he saw, even in the military, even if you don't kill anyone, what you see in a war zone, people blown up, a leg over here, an arm over there, the head's over there, and you putting this person together in a body bag. That has an effect on you. So a lot of things happened in Vietnam to a lot of people. And then when they came home, they were spat upon.
Yes.
And not received well for defending what this country, or following orders from the commander-in-chief to make things happen.
Yeah. I know my dad said when he returned back, first thing he did is that he burned his uniform because of how people responded to him.
And let me say this, if I might. We do have an Indiana Military Veterans Hall of Fame, if I can get a commercial in here.
Yes, go ahead.
Wrote that legislation in 2013. Mm-hmm. It's at 5360 Herbert Lloyd Road, there in Fort Harrison grounds, right across the street from the DFAS parking lot. We have our own freestanding building. We opened that in April of 2018. We were the 19th state to have a Veterans Hall of Fame in 2013. And we were the first state, and I think the only state, to have a freestanding building for the Veterans Hall of Fame. And if you were injured in the military, done some special duties, got Civil Cross, right. Different, go to IndianaMilitaryVeteransHallOfFame.com and see what the requirements are. and see if you can get inducted to the Indiana Military Veterans Hall of Fame. And I, too, thank all of the veterans for serving this great nation.
Awesome. Thank you. And we'll make sure we get more information on that as well. Now, Representative Jackson, there was something that really hit me earlier today because that you mentioned, because I'm a country boy. And being in the country, we talked about, we always talk about the health care. We always talk about the fire department. And you mentioned something earlier about the volunteer firemen that are out there on a regular basis, making sure that, okay, if something happens, here they are, they're able to come to the rescue. Smaller communities. And I'm after listening to what you were saying, that's not even one of the questions that I had. But because it just hit closer to home, my small town is about 25 to 3,000 people. We do have a fire department. But for here in the state of Indiana, for smaller communities, what are they to do? Here you are, you have volunteer firemen. For the smaller communities, do they, if you're 40 miles away from a larger city, are they able to call? Is there 911? What are they able to do to get quicker response today?
Well, in those little small towns where they don't have a large fire department that is funded by the city, because, like you said, a little small town, they don't have the budget. They cannot afford to pay. So what usually they may have is a fire truck that they may have purchased from one of the largest towns that was getting rid of it. So they will have that. They will have the actual fire station, but they cannot afford to pay the firefighters. So if they have a fire, then they have a mechanism of contacting the firemen, the volunteer firemen, and they go over to the station or whatever, and then they're able to go to the location to put out the fire. And that's anytime, day or night. And it's just very shameful that we as a state won't pass legislation that will help them. Because if we had to give each little small town sufficient money to pay for each one of those firefighters full time, that would be up to $4 or $5 billion a year.
And that was the next question I was going to ask you. I'm sorry, go ahead. Please.
Yes, that is a lot, because it's a lot of, not only is it for their salaries, but you also got to understand they've got to have training. And the training is not at the location where they are. So they may have to travel a couple of hours in order to get that training. They've got tests. They've got all kinds of things that they have to do in order to be ready and to be prepared and educated. Because putting a fire out is not just grabbing a hose and just, spraying, putting the fire out. You need to go and take those courses for the science of putting it out. So these are the things that the firefighters are utilizing their time and their energy away from their families and their jobs in order to do it, because many of the trainings occur during the normal Monday through Friday work week.
Wow.
And they're doing all of this to protect the people in their communities and getting nothing for it.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. And I want to be cognizant of your time, because the information that you guys have provided has been unbelievable. And I do have one more question. And it actually, and just to let you know, I haven't even touched any of the questions that I actually had for you guys. But based upon some of the things that you guys have said in terms of guns, in terms of the human trafficking. I mean, everything, education. I ask my students all the time, because I'm dealing with students from the age of actually 17 to 22, 23 years old. And 85 to 90% of them do not watch linear television. And what I mean by that, channel 8, channel Fox 59, TTV4, channel 13, WTHR. They do not watch regular television and WFYI. They just don't. They're doing everything on their cell phones as they possibly can. And so I asked the question to them, how do you get your news? How do you find out about things? And I know this is not one of the things that you don't have you have legislation on, but is this something that is actually being discussed? Because 10 to 15 years from now, these 17 to 22, 23, 24-year-olds will be in decision-making positions. And linear television, yes, it may still be here, but in what form? And my question to you is this: how can we ensure that the younger generation in that age group, and actually I should go down to the age of 14, for the younger generation, how can we ensure that they are able to receive information? Okay, we have a fire, weather. We have bad weather coming. Okay, what if the sirens don't go off? Is there a way, or has that even been discussed? And I know this is not even a topic that we even discussed or even talked about, but is that something that has even been discussed in the budget before we close out today?
Well, I looked at my watch because I thought we do not have enough time to cover this topic.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
I wasn't an insult. I was being a little dramatic and theatrical there. There's so many places we can go with this because there's so much misinformation out there. That's one of the things that goes on. Representative Bartlett talked about this, and this is, again, I'm just hitting little points because we don't have a lot of time.
Right.
Talking about, as you made the comment earlier about how we as Democrats are anti-gun or anti-whatever, we as also Democrats don't message as well as we should. And so we get, as he said, we get labels stuck on us that are not accurate. I'm going to go, again, there's so many things we could talk about here. We did have and pass legislation that has to do with AI.
Yes.
Artificial intelligence, because it is becoming so dominant and it's becoming so good that you can create a commercial, a video, and it all originates out of a computer. It's not actually cameras going out and recording, microphones using to get audio.
Oh, I can create something that I put in your mouth that you didn't say.
Yeah. So we actually had, in terms of political legislation that passed, it turns out our current governor actually did a commercial that he had to kind of retract a little bit because it added in it used AI to change an image involving Dr. McCormick, who was the Democrat candidate. But when you look at, and there's other conversations that we're having and going on, I'm just focusing on AI with this part. AI, because you can make someone say something they didn't say, make them look like they did something they didn't do. You're talking about creating pictures, videos. I can take you and put you in some place you weren't, and it looks darn good.
It looks real.
And as technology and as we learn more, it's going to look even better. Yeah. It'll look realer than you. So that's a big concern. Part of it is education and hopefully getting people to understand the power of messaging. Television and video is my background. I went to a school for, and I remember learning as an undergrad. Now, that was decades ago. I won't say how long ago.
Wait a minute, I'm older than you.
Yeah, so I remember in a class, now, and again, this was before AI. AI wasn't even where we are now with things we can do. And I remember a professor giving us the lesson, You need to understand the power you have with creating video and how you can, even back then, you could manipulate stuff. And I'll tell you a story because my father had this seat for 33 years, and I remember we were watching the news, and it was an event where I believe it was Jesse Jackson spoke. Okay. And my father was at the event. So we're watching the news discussing this event, and they showed a clip of him, and my father said, "That's not what he said," because they had taken video, they had taken two different pieces from what he said, combined them together, and then covered the edit so it looked like it was a continuous comment. Mm-hmm. So that was decades ago. Imagine what we can do now with editing and AI and effects and et cetera. So we have to, number one, hopefully teach people that do this, like I was taught by that person, the responsibility you have, but also teach people how do you do some research, look into, make sure what you just watched is actually accurate, is actually the truth, and that you're not going off on some tangent or some disbelief that is marred by something that was not real, but someone decided they wanted to create images, create video, create audio, create pictures to provide their message, which is not the correct message.
I think we as adults, I think it's our responsibility to... Is this better?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, I think we as an adult, I think it's our responsibility to educate our children, to make sure that we sit down with them.
Yes.
And we talk to them, because with the way things are going now, they're doing everything they can to dismantle education, take away programs, take away books out of schools, take away opportunities that were once had. And as a result of that, these children have found a different way in order to get the information that they are seeking, which is TikTok and some of all of these things. So therefore, they're not getting what is called quality news, quality education, etc. And one of the things that really surprised me, because I'm not originally from Indiana, and that is the cursive writing.
Yes.
And I was in Connecticut, and a friend of mine called me, and she says, "Hey, can you go by Target?" And I said, "Target? Yeah, but why? They got a Target at home." She says, "I need you to go by Target because Target was selling cursive workbooks for $1, and they're all sold out." And I'm like, "Well, can't they just order some?" She said, they can't. I've already asked. So if you could pick me up about 25 of them, because I want to share them with the people in my community, because they don't teach cursive writing in the schools. And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" She says, "No, I'm serious. And I need to have some extra ones because I want to make sure that my grandchildren coming up will be able, I can teach them, and they'll be able to write and to read what cursive is." Well, fast forward, I come home, I bring these 25 books that I was requested, because in Connecticut, it's a part of the curriculum. So that people weren't lined up to buy them at the store. And I'm volunteering at the high school there, and the students had to fill out the forms, and I said, "Well, I need you to sign your name." And they were printing their names fast as you could write in cursive. And I'm steady saying, no, you got to write it in cursive. And they're looking at me with a blank look on their face saying, "Well, this is how I sign my name." And I'm like, "But this is not cursive." And they're saying, "But I don't know how to write like that." And I said, "Well, then, but you can read, right?" And they're like, "Read what?" I said, "Read cursive." And he says, "No." Well, let's just be realistic. If you can't write cursive, you can't read it. The only way you can try to write it is if someone else writes it and then you try to copy what they're written. Then how are you going to be able to read the Constitution? How are you going to read anything else? Because that's how it is written in cursive. So what we're doing, unfortunately, is we are destroying the generations that are coming, because we are putting them in a position where they're going to be handicapped. That is why it's so important that we as parents, we have to have our own school if necessary at home in the evening to teach our children what they need to learn. And I mean, I can remember my mom doing it with me.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not going to lie, I hated it. But my mother was a teacher, but she didn't play. You go to school, but when you got home, you had to go to her school too.
Yes, you had to.
And during the summertime, she didn't play. You had to go to school. You might be able to go to swim at the park for a couple of days during the week, but you had books to read, you had to learn literature, you had to learn Black history, and you had to learn all these things that she had lined up for you. But, you know, it was difficult, I'm not going to lie.
Yes,
it was difficult, but it was much appreciative when I look back on it now, and I say, you know what, it's so much that they stopped teaching in schools, not just today, but years ago. The other thing is, when it comes to a lot of the classes that they used to teach in school, they no longer teach them.
No.
When you went to school, you could learn all the life skills that you would need in high school: how to cook, how to do a budget, how to
build,
how to pay bills, write checks, all those kind of things. They don't teach that anymore. If you don't learn how to do that at home, at your parents' school, then you are lost. You don't know how to do it. You think when you get paid, I can just go and buy these gym shoes, I can buy this new outfit, but what about paying my bills? What about all the things that I need to survive? But they have not been taught that.
Yes, that is so true. Representative Barton.
Yeah, you said something I disagree with. You said you need to go back to age 14. You need to go back to age 4. Because the 4-year-olds,
I agree with you.
the 4-year-olds got the phone. AI, listen to that, artificial intelligence. The very name should be mind-boggling. I want you to use artificial intelligence. Rep. Jackson mentioned cursive writing. One of the reasons, in my opinion, we are doing away with cursive writing is she mentioned the Constitution is written in cursive. 25, 35 years from now, our children will not be able to read the Constitution. They will not be able to read the Bill of Rights.
And understand what they are reading
yes.
and their rights.
And February, I believe, of 2022, a family in California went back and did research on land that was taken from their family. And they went to court and was able to recover that land. That land was worth $74 million in the South. Often, African Americans who own land, if the slave, well, not slave owners, but white folk wanted it, they would take your land. If you go back now and do the research and find out there's no bill of sale for the land that your great-grandparents had, you can go to court and recover that land. But all that documentation is written in cursive.
Yes.
So if you can't read it, you can't do the research.
That's right. That's right.
So there's always an underlying reason for why they dummy you down. And I learned that term, dummying down, from Earl Harris Sr., his dad, who was my mentor. Very, very, very intelligent man. Laid back. Well, when I first went, I'll tell the story, and I'll shut up. When I first went to the legislature, I replaced someone. I'd been her campaign manager for 16 years, and she told me, she said, John, when I step down, I want you to take my place. She stepped down in November of 2007. Okay. I was caucused in December 2007. So I think they get like 2 weeks with legislative services to training. I got good 45 minutes, maybe an hour. So I go to January, we go to session, and I got sworn in that morning and went in session that afternoon. So things were happening so fast, my heart rate picked up, you know, and I said, I messed up. I've got 68,000 people dependent on me, and this stuff is moving so fast, I can't keep up. So I called Mae Dickinson. I said, Rep, she said, yeah. I said, I can't do this. She said, what's wrong? I said, everything is moving so fast. She said, well, you know Representative Earl Harris. I said, yeah. She said, just talk to him. So he sat up front. I was sitting in the back because I'm a newbie. So I go up front and I do him like that. Yeah. So he came out. I said, Representative Harris, I can't do this. He said, what do you mean? I said, everything is moving so fast, you know, that I can't keep up. He said, well, if it don't pertain to you, don't worry about it.
Okay.
He said, there's a system. And anything that you need to know, your legislative assistant will have it. And she'll tell you where you need to go to get things done. They go through a training. They know how to get things done. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. And I stuck with him. And Earl Harris Sr. is the only somebody that has a monument on the State House. They planted a tree and put a monument there beside that tree recognizing him. He was just that great.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. And with that, my gosh, just a couple of topics, 3 topics mainly, 3.5. And so much information that was just garnered and discussed by just the 3 of you. And just imagine if the entire IBLC was represented here. We'd be here until tomorrow, just discussing some of the topics. If possible, we need to do this again. And as I mentioned to you, the first time we did this was in 2022. And it's been over 3 years, well, almost 3 full years since we last did this. And because of all of this information that we have, we need to make sure, and I'm quite sure there are a lot of people out there that are streaming. Because of the rain, they didn't come, but a lot of people called and said, we'll be watching. What's the URL again? But we need to make sure that we disseminate and we get this information out again.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Couple quick. First of all, thank you again, John, for sharing that story. And I know we didn't get to everything we talked about,
yes.
and I want to say something about that. First of all, I want to remind everyone that the State House is the people's house. It's your house. So you can walk in those doors. You can show up to committee, present in committee, talk to your rep, talk to your senator. Advocacy. We have, and again, I know we're running out of time here, so we didn't get to everything, but we have some major things going on. This is a budget year. So take a look and see what's going on in terms of the budget. We have property taxes, which is a big issue. Senate Bill 1. Take a look at Senate Bill 1 and what that means to your property taxes, because property taxes impact all of us. And the fight that's going on that actually is a little bit of a fight between the governor and the Senate and the Republicans in the legislature, because he ran on lowering property taxes, and what he wanted, property taxes were raised up. It's important because, number one, property taxes impact whether you stay in your house or not.
Yes, it does.
But property taxes also pay for things like police, fire, school, et cetera. So it's a gentle balance there. Also look at something like Senate Bill 518, which has a huge impact on what's going on in terms of funds that go to traditional public schools, and which are still something like 87 to 90% of our young people are educated through traditional public schools. I used to live here in Indianapolis. I worked at IPS, so I have 20 years of working in public education. There is a huge shift that's been going on, moving, and now this bill moves money over, if it passes, to the charter schools, taking away from that. We already know education is already has economic issues there, and making it even harder. We also have a bill which there was 2 versions, one in the House, one in the Senate. The one in the House did not prevail. The one in the Senate passed. The Senate has come over to us and does not look like it's been passed on twice.
Right.
That takes school boards from being nonpartisan. So you run for school board, we don't know and usually don't care what your party is, but making it so that you actually have to present that information. That is a huge game changer in the wrong direction. So there's some huge things going on that hopefully people will pay attention to and get engaged and involved in the process. We always talk about advocacy. We always talk about that. Come to the State House, talk to us, talk to your rep, talk to your senator. It's a big deal if they don't want to spend time with you. Gives you a lot of information on whom you should vote for, or in the other case, whom you should not vote for. So I could go on for a while, but I know we're running out of time. But I wanted to make sure we touched on those bills, and then we have some things involving mental health. So, stay engaged, and hopefully everyone out there watching, please stay engaged in the process, because pretty much every part of your life is impacted by legislation that we deal with.
And that is so true. And as you indicated, there are so many topics that we need to be aware of. And there are so many topics that we could still, just the four of us, that we could still talk about, and like we say down south, until the cows come home.
We also did not talk about DEI and the governor's executive order related to that too, and the impact that's having not only here in Indiana, but all across the country.
And see, we could stay on that for about 2 hours just on DEI alone, and how it affects each and every person. Because a lot of people say, well, it only affects the African American and also the people that are coming across the border. It actually affects more of our Caucasian females than it affects us. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. But we'll save that subject for another day, because, as I said, we could stay on that one alone for about 2 hours. But Representative Jackson, Representative Harris, Representative Bartlett, thank you very much. And didn't get a chance to ask you a lot of questions, Representative Jackson, but that's all right. Your time is coming. But it was just that when Representative Bartlett mentioned all of the things about trafficking, it just, all of a sudden, just so many things just took off, and we just took it from there. But Representative Harris, Representative Jackson, Representative Bartlett, thank you for taking the time out tonight to be here and to be a part of this live stream. And hopefully a lot of you are able to get a lot of information from this. And prayerfully and hopefully we'll be able to do another one of these this year. Can't give a date, because this is something that we have to work out in terms of their availability, because they're going, because they're serving us. And we have to make sure that we are aware of their time. And because of their time, I have to make sure I cut this off. But thank you very much for everyone that has watched us live on this live stream. And if you have friends that are interested in watching the show, make sure you tell them to go on the live stream, go to our YouTube site, LinkedIn, and any of the other sites that we have, any of the other mediums that we have this on. Please make sure you let them know, because they'll be able to hear from members of the state legislation, and all of the legislation that we have out there today that we need to be aware of. So again, thank you very much. Please have a good night, and make sure you support your HBCU. I'm a graduate of Jackson State, and so I cannot finish a show without saying support your HBCU, because if we don't support our HBCUs, it's a guarantee no one else will. May God bless you, may God keep you, and see you on the next show. Good night. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Wow. I mean, we didn't get a chance to even go to any of the questions. This is your fault. You hijacked the show. Oh my gosh, this was absolutely awesome. Yes. Oh gosh, thank you guys very much. What's up? What's happening? Oh my gosh, this was. When can we do this again? Because I mean, we didn't even touch property tax.
What I would suggest is after session. This way everything's.
Oh no. That's fine. I mean, you let me know. You guys let me know when is the best time to do this, because I mean, I'll talk with Alexis and make sure we get everything in terms of times.
Because we didn't talk about, because we just started, we're in the process of scheduling things. As we do every off session, we do town halls all over the state.
And we did talk about the town halls. Yeah, the seven town halls.
7 town halls. So
Yeah.
we'll know at that point when and where they are. And we can provide that information.
Yeah, and I can actually cover those live for you.
I know I'm tired too. I got to be at
And so that's something I would. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we have the locations. We just haven't locked in the date.
Much sooner.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do my smooth. Everybody usually, but I.
Hey, thank you. Oh, let me give you my information as well. Yes. Oh, yes. Here you go.
So I think I still got your email and everything. Can I contact you?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
So let me know. You're with 13?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll
Don't make it, I will.
I didn't bring any cards with me.
Okay.
But I'll send you my information.
Okay. Yes. If there's anything I can do, and also these two ladies here, they're from Ball State.
Oh, very nice to meet you.
Yeah. So I always want to make sure that
Very nice to meet you, Nyla.
they are in this because they're media majors.
Very nice. Awesome. We have a
Yeah.
lot of Ball State grads.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much
And
everybody.
This is your
Well,
I'm ready to go.
now did you get a chance to meet Scotty as well? Yes. Okay. Oh, okay. Yes. Yes. As a matter of fact, how do you want it set up? Okay.
We're right here.
Yes. Right here could be.
I'm going to get off. I haven't run the Can I do any boxes back home and back?
Yes. Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
But,
Because we got
I love
20 of
this.
them.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do this. Yeah, we're gonna do this again.
Yeah. All right. Let me get
Go ahead and get them first. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I won't get this picture myself. Oh, I am. But I want this picture first with them, and. Okay. Awesome.
Where in Mississippi did you grow up?
Centerville, Mississippi.
Okay.
And what part were you from?
Yazoo City.
Yazoo? Oh yeah.
North of Jackson.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, Jackson State.
Yep, my son went to
Yes,
Jackson
please do.
State.
I mean, it's already on it.
See?
We was in there talking.
Cool. Thank you. But yeah, I graduated from J.